Welcome to M Go Bucks, Sherrone Moore. He is the man now. Thank goodness Michigan didn't go out on some 3-month long, nationwide search for a coach. They did the right thing. They made the only choice they possibly could. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, will there be any fallout? I don't think there probably will be a lot, but we still have the NCAA sanctions possibly coming. We'll talk about that too. Please make sure
it's not possibly. It's how much will there be a light punishment or a heavy punishment?
Please,
definitely punishment.
Please subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate that. This is turning out to be maybe the most entertaining off seasons that I can remember.
Ever for both teams. For both of our teams.
Seriously, both of our teams, and the GOAT retires. Michigan wins the national title. It's almost like this huge afterthought that I have to remind myself that happened, because then Nick Saban retired. Then all the transfer portal stuff happened. Ohio State started picking people up. Ohio State, now spelled with a $. And now Jim Harbaugh goes off to the Chargers. Huge story. And now Moore is the head coach. There's just been so much change going on. So much change. It's crazy. Hey, how's it going, 8 Mile?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, so I've been thinking a little bit about this. So I'm sure after the Alabama fiasco that the Michigan administrators were not going to let that happen to their team. They're like, you know what? I think we're going to go with the safe pick. We're going to keep our team together. We're also going to save about $7 million a year because his contract was reportedly $5.25 million over 5 years. Obviously, if he does a good job, he'll get a raise after a couple of years, I'm sure.
Sure.
But, saves a lot of money. The interesting thing is he going to be the offensive coordinator? Even if he hires an offensive coordinator, is it going to be like Brian Hartline, where he actually isn't calling the plays? Hartline only had that title to get a pay raise. He's maybe in the future, after he learns under Bill O'Brien and other people, maybe he'll be able to do it. But it just seems like Michigan definitely took the short-term, easy way out of this situation, and did Sherrone. Sherrone Moore might be the right guy for the job, but it's the short-term fix for sure. We don't know if it's a good long-term fix because he's never been a head coach other than a few games last year where Jim Harbaugh was, I kept hearing from everyone else, well, Harbaugh is really doing everything behind the scenes, so Moore doesn't really have to do anything other than call plays that Jim Harbaugh tells him to call.
No, it's not like Harbaugh was on the line. You're
no, not like during the game. I'm just saying, he did all the prep, before the games. He planned everything during the week. I was just told that it's not going to hurt Michigan because he's going to be able to do what he normally does throughout the week. He just won't be able to be there on game day. So the only thing that he's not going to be able to do is, fourth down calls and stuff like that.
See, okay, so here's where I disagree. So Coach Moore still had to go out there and play the game against Ryan Day head-to-head, in game. Anything you can say is maybe Jim Harbaugh built the program. Granted, he did.
You mean like when they were playing Penn State, where they're like, okay, when you play Penn State, run it 44 times in a row.
Yeah. No, that was probably all on Moore. He's the guy that made that decision.
Yeah,
but you've got to say his in-game decision making and in-game coaching, managing the game, managing the clock, it was all perfect. That's not something you can. That's something you got to go through. That's something coaches generally go to a smaller school and learn how to do that kind of shit. But then Coach Moore actually went in and did that against Penn State. He did it against Maryland, who has a really good coach. They were going to beat Maryland anyway, probably. Then against Ohio State, against Ryan
Maryland
Day.
Game was
Ryan Day's a top 10 coach.
Maryland was close.
Maryland was close. Yeah, and an injured quarterback. JJ was injured. Against both Penn State and against Maryland. They had to run the ball a lot. They were going to do that anyway, granted. But still, I think that Coach Moore, so you hire a coach, what's the first question you have? Anytime you hire a coach at either Michigan or Ohio State, your first question is going to be going right to, well, can he beat Ohio State? That's it. And Moore's already beaten Ohio State. He's already done it.
And can he recruit?
And can he recruit? Oh my gosh, that's the biggest question right now. I hope that he has a much, much different philosophy, much different plan, and hopefully they actually get someone to actually recruit a lot better. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, 8 Mile is a good question. Do you think the DC will go with Jim? Yes.
100%.
Jesse Minter. He's either going to 100% go with Jim, or he's just going to go regardless.
I mean, all of the rumors, like, and just like the way that the social media is, it seems like everyone is congratulating him like they're not going to be there. So, all the reporting has been pretty accurate about this so far. So, I mean, almost definitely it's going to be Jay Harbaugh and Jesse Minter going with Coach to the Chargers. So,
yeah, very true. Chris, yeah, Michigan getting body slammed.
But actually,
yeah.
what I wanted to bring up though was, the other interesting thing is I seriously doubt Harbaugh planned this, but the timing is perfect because it really doesn't, in my opinion, the portal shouldn't hurt Michigan at all right now, because with Alabama, there was, when the portal opened for Alabama, they could still transfer and get into classes at other schools. So right now, all the classes have already started. So it would be really difficult for anyone to just go in the portal for Michigan and go anywhere, because all the classes have already started. I mean, maybe it's not a huge deal, and I'm guessing with the top recruit, if they really wanted to do it, the school would probably get approvals and whatever, but it would still be a pain. But to go find housing and then have to be behind, going to another school and getting I think that alone is going to make it much harder much less likely for people to transfer. And then also, yeah, and then I think it's not going to happen really. I think they're going to lose some people, but it's not going to be until the spring. The normal portal opens in the spring. I think it's too late right now.
Well, yeah, in spring, guys will already know kind of where they stand, and so if they're not in the too deep, they're probably thinking about transferring either way. But that's an interesting take, and really, what I'm worried about is if any it transfers is really on defense, because that's really where Michigan's the strongest.
Yeah.
And on offense, they've only got one guy coming back, technically one starter coming back. That's the tight end.
But defense rotates. Defense usually rotates more than offense, so that's not as big of a thing either, is it?
Well, to lose the stars, I don't want to lose the star players.
Yeah, no, but I mean, your NIL has been coming around lately, so I don't think you're going to lose anyone big. So
yeah, very true.
Yeah, it seems to me like Harbaugh, taking so long to get this job for the Chargers, doing on those extra interviews, might have saved them by having the portal window opening a little bit too late for people to leave.
That's true.
4D test.
Chris says he shouldn't have cried though. Come on, man. Hey, those were tears of joy. You can't stop the tears. They just come. When it happens, you just can't stop it.
I'll say if you win a title, if you normally I would say that, but if you win a national title, you can do whatever you want.
Well, that was before he won the national title, but
I know, but he was on the way to the national title.
On the way, I guess. So, yeah, crying is okay. Crying is okay. Very true.
Crying is okay if you win all your games.
Yeah. So let's talk about the postseason. So, what could really derail Michigan is what my biggest fear is if the NCAA comes back, their fraudulent NCAA, who's not going after anyone who's driving up in a Lamborghini on signing day, but they will go after Michigan for like an out of season recruiting session of some sort. I think what the first thing that Harbaugh was getting
Colorado just got hit with that today too. Did you see that?
Yeah. What's up with that? There's all kinds of tampering. So, I mean, that's really what's irritating. It's not like the things that Michigan did weren't technically against the rules and they shouldn't be punished, but come on, like call balls and strikes when you're going to be doing this. But
yeah, I mean, I was initially really upset when who was it who won was it Addison? Was he at Purdue where he won the Bolitnikoff and then he went to USC a couple of years ago? So it was like right when NIL started. So it was the very first year of it. So I guess it was 2 years ago. So he was, 2 years ago he wins the. No, I guess it would have been It would have been the 2021 season at Purdue where he won the Bolitnikoff, And then so 2022, he transfers to USC, and the rumor was he was transferring or whatever, and was getting all this money, and that was before he was in the portal. So like basically USC was the first to really do this, and now it's sort of like, well, everyone's doing it now. But USC started it. At the time, I was like, wow, that seems pretty shady, stealing someone's player like that. And now I'm like, well, if they're going to do that and they're not going to punish anybody, I guess that's what you have to do.
Yeah, that's that. And it's what I'm really thinking is the postseason ban. If Michigan gets busted with a postseason ban, and granted, the NCAA is probably not coming out anytime soon with the punishments because they're slow as molasses. But if they come out with a postseason ban, that's a disaster. Because if you got a bunch of star players as sophomores or juniors, I should say, who are not even going to have any reason to play, Will Johnson, what's he going to play for if there's a postseason ban? You can't even win the Big Ten title. Like, those guys would either transfer out or they just take the year off. And I mean, I wouldn't blame them.
In NIL, they will not take the season off. They will definitely either play or transfer because they're going to want that money. They're going to get $1 billion to play at Michigan or somewhere else.
Yeah, and the school that is banned from the postseason has less of an incentive to actually pay players for that year, right? Because you don't even get to do anything with it. I mean, granted, they still get to play Ohio State at the end, but if they have a down year this coming up year, which is not out of the realm of possibilities because of the schedule and what they've lost, then you've got a lot of guys, not getting really paid very well, possibly, and then not being able to play in the postseason. And that's just going to cause all kinds of havoc. But it would have to happen in the middle of the season, I would imagine. I don't think the NCAA is going to come out anytime soon with that.
Yeah, another interesting thing, we'll get back to that, but slightly off topic. I was just thinking about how much more depth teams are going to have to be able to compete in a 12-team playoff now, and how important that number 1 or 2 seed is, because only 2 teams are getting the bye, I believe, right? Or is it 4 teams? I think it's just the first 2. I think 1 and 2 get a bye.
Maybe just the 2.
So I think the first 2. I think it's just the first 2 that get a bye. So that's obviously super important. But then the other thing is going to be, you're going to have to be able to play all these extra games that you normally don't play. So like, I think a team like Michigan, the 2023 Michigan would have been the perfect team for a 12-team playoff, because you guys had so much depth, especially on defense, right? I mean, the amount and offensive line. Like, I gotta admit, the main reason, really the only reason I thought that you guys wouldn't pull it out and win the national title was because you lost Zach Minter. I was like, there's no way you're gonna not just losing an offensive lineman, but he was your best offensive lineman. So I was just like, you know what? You're not going to lose your best offensive line. I mean, I know they have a great offensive line. It wasn't as good as the previous 2 years, in my opinion. But, you lose your top guy from a line that wasn't as good the last 2 as the previous 2 years. And you're going to go in and you're going to beat Bama and Washington. And I just didn't think that was going to happen because, it's really tough. Like, offensive line is like one of the one position outside of quarterback. It's like the hardest to replace. Especially if you don't have, you have zero continuity, you have continuity with it that they have like all year together, and then you just throw a new guy in there and it didn't even matter. So like, that was the most impressive thing to me about beating Alabama and Washington, was losing him and still being able to do it. And even it was against Ohio State too, because he went down against us.
Yeah, I mean, we had the 6 offensive linemen that we played in the jumbo package, and the next guy came in, and he's going too. Name's escaping me right now, but he was the right tackle, came in when Zinter went down. He's gone too. Like, we're not even getting the guy that came in for Zinter. Essentially, he's going to the NFL. We're sending like 6 guys to the NFL, 6 starters, 1 pseudo starter. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane. We're losing everyone. Literally only getting Loveland back. And Chris just made a comment that says Loveland coming to the Buckeyes. No way he's going to go to the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes don't know how to use a tight end.
This year we did.
How he plays for a tight end.
Did you see?
You either go try and block real badly, or you go run around out there and we'll try to throw the ball.
Farmer Gronk had probably like 800 yards or something this year. He was amazing.
Yeah, I know.
It was like the best year for a tight end ever at Ohio State this year.
Yep. And it and it took McCord to do it.
Yeah. That's how good he was. He was our number 2 receiver, was our freaking tight end.
Oh, that's so disgusting. Yeah, with all those
receivers, right? That's just unbelievable. That shows you how good he was. He was unbelievable.
If McCord comes to Michigan, I don't think that's going to happen, but I would welcome him.
But the thing is, we have no depth at tight end. Like, we have all these young guys or whatever. You have one transfer from Ohio University. Didn't have a whole lot of passing yards last year, or receiving yards. But we don't have any depth. We have like Guy Scott Jr. and then we have another freshman, or I guess he's a sophomore now, who had like 60 yards. I mean, 2 guys that are both under 100 yards receiving. And I don't think either of them, I mean, Jelani Thurman is the other one. So people think he's like an absolute freak, but I mean, he's super raw. So I don't know if he's going to be ready to do anything this year. So
yeah, well,
I don't know. I'm really worried about tight end, actually.
Tight end.
Unless we pick one up, maybe we can get one from Michigan.
Yeah, I doubt it. But speaking of McCord, I mean, are you going to be feeling a little bit? Do you feel like maybe you could have gotten a better year 2 McCord? I mean, the guy only lost 1 game. I mean, granted, it was a big one, and he went out kind of like a wuss, kind of like a weasel.
Yeah,
so I'm sure you're okay with him
anyone
still year 2 quarterback. That's a pretty big deal.
I think anyone who doesn't have the competitive fire to stay, especially, I mean, so he wasn't guaranteed that he would start, but I'm sure he would have been given every opportunity, being that he was the freaking starter all year, right? They're not going to just, I mean, it would have been an open competition, but he would have had the lead because he had so much experience. I mean, I think he would have had a good chance of doing it, but I mean, anyone who's just going to leave like that, they obviously have no competitive fire. I mean, look where he's going. No one wanted him. What does that tell you? We had to go to Syracuse.
Yeah, he was wanting to go to Nebraska, but then a freshman came in that might challenge his 1 year left at college. So, he's not coming to Michigan. He doesn't have good enough chances to start at Michigan. But that would be hilarious if that happened. So, getting back to Coach Moore, and his assistants. So, obviously, the defensive coordinator is a huge deal. Who's he going to elevate? Because I know Coach Klink he's set up as the co-defensive coordinator, but you never know if those titles are complete BS, real. Where you're just, I mean, because Coach Klink's great DB coach, but maybe they were just trying to, at some point in the last couple of years, someone was coming after him. So Harbaugh promoted him to the co-defensive coordinator and, gave him some extra money for that to keep him. Or maybe he does want to be the defensive coordinator and he can. I don't know.
I have a question for you. If you could choose to have 2024 as Harbaugh your coach, but no Minter as defensive coordinator, or would you rather have Minter still here but no Harbaugh? Who do you think is going to hurt more?
I'd take Harbaugh because it sounds like Minter is. If you can just find someone who can run that Baltimore defense, you can pretty much not dominate, but you're going to be successful. Look at Mike McDonald. He was at Michigan for 1 year, switched out. Minter came in.
I don't think it's just a scheme, because everyone else in the NFL sees that scheme, but only what's his name? What is his name again? McDonald.
McDonald.
McDonald. Yeah, only McDonald and Minter have been elite at it in college and then in the NFL. I mean, they both. Like, no one else is doing it.
Not necessarily. There's a dude, and I'm not going to remember his name, but he was at UCLA's defensive coordinator. He came in last year, or in 2023, out of Baltimore, and elevated their defense to something like from the 80s to number 11. Mm-hmm. And I'm not remembering his name. And USC just hired him away from UCLA to be their defensive coordinator. And so, obviously, they really like. He's running that. The guy is actually. Was on the some media's list about could maybe coming to Michigan. I don't think he would do that necessarily because he's obviously successful. He's at USC, but as long as we can find someone to come do that, I mean, we don't necessarily need someone to come in from Baltimore to do that. We've got guys that have been on our staff for like 3 years now running. So,
would you rather just have all internal hires? That seems kind of risky to have.
Not necessarily. Experience. I mean, if more,
because you haven't never really done that before. Yeah, like all of your previous hires have been external hires.
Yeah, so we'll find out. And then Mike Hart, I mean, he wants to be a head coach someday. Is he going to be elevated in some way to maybe a co-offensive coordinator? He's the running game coordinator right now and running backs.
Yeah. Or he's apparently not. He's not. I think he's leaving, right? Because I texted earlier about he wasn't happy about. Sounded like he wasn't getting the job.
We'll see. We'll see.
Could be early rumors, but my
early rumors.
sources
We'll
my
see.
sources on Twitter are always top notch.
I don't want him to leave because your sources on Twitter. Yeah, ginification. By the way, Matt is on. Is that your handle? Ginification.
Yeah.
Follow him. But yeah, I think that we want to keep Mike Hart because obviously the running backs perform really well, and they need to keep Mike Hart for sure. Pay him what he needs, and because we've got Donovan Edwards coming back, we've got a couple of really good running backs behind him. I think we need to keep him for sure. Give him the co-offensive coordinator position, something. And then we've got to have someone take over for the offensive line. I mean, I'm really, really, really hoping Sherrone Moore doesn't decide to call plays. We don't need another Ryan Day situation that we have someone who just can't stop calling plays. We need to find an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean that's the other scary thing, right? I mean, what has been the strength of I mean, they've obviously Michigan has been really good the last 3 years, but what do you think has been the best thing that Michigan has
the
done?
Offensive line and defensive line.
And now they're going to lose their offensive line coach potentially, right? Because I mean, supposedly that's one of the hardest areas to coach. So it would be really difficult to be a head coach and an offensive line coach and an offensive coordinator. I mean, that's just way too much. That's why it's even more impressive what he was able to do this year.
Yeah, but it's not sustainable though. I mean, he's figuring it out, but it's not sustainable and needs to not do that. So we'll hope that he doesn't do that. And we have the tight end coach now, Grant Newsome. He's a young dude, really smart guy. He could have gone into like the financial industry and made like a lot more than he's making as tight end coach. But I mean, he was a former offensive lineman. Maybe he can be elevated to the offensive line coach. That's the way Coach Moore did it. He came in as tight ends coach, then was elevated to the offensive line coach. So hoping we got some like young talent coming up there and that they can find some guys. And like you said, recruiting. They need to step up their game big time. If they're not noticing what Ohio State's doing, they need to take notice. But I'm sure they are.
Yeah, we also need to see if Sherrone Moore has any connections to any people in code breaking in the Marines that could potentially help coordinate their signals.
He needs to find his Luca Brasi. Yeah, we definitely need another sign stealer for sure. Maybe the next sign stealer cannot buy tickets in his own name this time. I mean that would be a good start. I mean, if you're going to be a crook, at least like read a book on how to do it.
Well, and then going in person wearing the shades to the CMU game, we still haven't heard anything about that yet. That's
CMU. There's a rumor he was actually working for CMU, like in an official capacity. Like how else would he get on the field, right?
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean I can't remember who said it, but he says that doesn't mean they can't. He can't do a little reconnaissance while he's there on CMU. Sure. Not that you would need that. But
no, I mean, because Michigan State was so bad. But I mean, every little bit helps, I guess.
We've also got defensive line coach Mike Elston. Mike Elston came from Notre Dame. He's got a lot of years under him. He's like 50 or in his 50s. So obviously he's doing good with defensive line. I mean, he's a newer coach at Michigan.
Isn't Sherrone Moore only 37? Like that's super young.
Yeah, he's like in his late 30s. So that's pretty crazy. Young. And then the last guy that we can't lose is the strength and conditioning coach. We oh my gosh, that dude, he very well may be going with Harbaugh though.
What do you think? So?
I can't remember his name. Ben Herbert.
Yeah, I would say you probably have a good. It's not like he's going to another college program, and I think that would be riskier because you would probably have a better chance of losing everyone. Whereas since he's going to the NFL, I think it's less likely that he's going to take as many people with him to NFL because he could probably hire more NFL people instead of college people.
He'll take Minter and Jay Harbaugh.
Yeah. So it's different job description. So you don't need to be able to be a recruiter or anything. Where in college, that's way more important than a lot of other things.
Yeah. Okay. Quick question for you and for everyone in the chat too. So how many games does Michigan lose this year? Knowing Coach Moore is the coach, we will probably retain most of the roster. I mean, I would imagine at least the starters. How many games does Michigan lose, considering they play their most ridiculous schedule. I think maybe they've got to have like maybe at least the top 5 hardest schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Florida might actually have the hardest. But Michigan has to play Fresno State to start. Second game is Texas. Then they also have to play the new Pac-12 game teams, the Washington, Oregon, USC. They play Wisconsin this year, and they miss Penn State, but then they play at Ohio State.
If you guys had Penn State this year, that would have really been the death knell. But I have no idea if Wisconsin's going to actually be better under the third year of Luke Fickell. Maybe if Wisconsin is better this year, then you guys are really in trouble. But other than that, like, I don't know. I think that your defense is going to keep you in a lot of games. I just don't know like what the quarterback situation is, and the offensive line. Like, you lose everyone. I know you got like one transfer, right? At least from Northwestern. I'm not sure if you got to have anyone else.
Yeah, got a transfer.
So I don't know.
We've got all the backups starters to the guys that we're playing this year, which, supposedly, I mean, Jim Harbaugh talks a pretty big game. He said we were going to have 15 or 16 draft picks. Probably not going to happen. We'll have a lot, but probably not that many. But it seems like we could definitely put up a serviceable offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we talked about this a little bit before. I think 3 losses is probably what Vegas is going to have the over under at, right? So, are they going to overperform and either beat Ohio State, Oregon, or Texas? Potentially underperform and lose to USC or Wisconsin. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility they would lose 4 or 5 if the offense is really terrible. I just think that the defense is so good that the offense just doesn't have to be great. When you have an elite, I mean, they lose some really good defensive players, but they had a lot of depth players on defense that are returning that weren't necessarily starters but did play a lot. And then they do have they have at least 3 first rounders on defense alone. So
well.
The defense, the defensive line and corners corner is going to carry, and the safety, they have good safety still too. Like, I mean, there's enough star power on defense to keep them in every game. Even against Ohio State, like, I mean, the defense is going to be tough against everybody.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the defense will keep them in some games. We'll have to see. I mean, quarterback is a huge question mark right now. But I think that it's the 3 games, because I think you can't lose more than 3. I mean, you may not even get into the playoffs even if you lose 3.
But because then you would have potentially no impressive wins, right? Like, if USC is good this year, then that would be a good win, I guess. I mean, you're going to need something. Like, maybe Wisconsin and USC will be ranked wins by the end of the year, and then that would be a situation where you could maybe still make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's really tough to say. I'm saying 3. I'm saying they're going to lose 3 games this year.
But also if Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State are top 5 teams and you lose close, it's not going to hurt you that much either. Right? Yeah,
it depends on how the games play out.
Because these aren't just like regular losses. You're losing 2 top 5 teams, so that's it shouldn't be punished as harshly.
Yeah, well, if USC gets a defensive coordinator that can actually transform their defense,
that's going to be a tough game.
That I can't remember his name. Yeah, they're going to be really tough with that offense.
Yeah, so your schedule, like, man. And if Wisconsin, if they make a step this year, then your schedule is really going to suck.
Yeah. Yeah, 8 Mile. I mean, Michigan might open up the offense a little more than now that Jim's gone. We'll have to see. And, what Moore decides to do. It just depends on the quarterback. I was watching some Alex Orji highlights from high school because I don't really have anything to watch at Michigan. All he did was run the ball. He was really good at that, obviously. But he did air it out quite a bit in high school. It looked pretty good. Didn't look like a lot of NFL-type throws, but we'll have to see. He's been in the program for a couple of years now. I don't know if maybe that's improved his passing. But if he's going to be the quarterback this year, I would have loved to have seen a lot more of him actually passing the ball, because otherwise you're basically doing the Ryan Day treatment. Where
I was just going to say that usually Harbaugh does a good job of getting his backups reps, but this year that's the thing I hate about always milking the, like, it's one thing when it's a ranked game and you do whatever it takes to win, but if it's like a scrub team you're playing, you need to get your backup quarterbacks in there and give them passing chances, not just running the clock that doesn't help grow your team at all. Like you need to get those backup quarterbacks passing reps, even against a bad team, just like get them reps in real game reps.
Yeah, totally. Life Investment says USC, Oregon, Washington, they're soft in the trenches, and this is Big Ten football. That's true. I mean, that's why Michigan had their success. We were just talking about that before. It's because of the offensive line, defensive line, and that's something Ohio State. A little bit about Ohio State. I think you guys are going to have a good defense, good defensive line. Your offensive line is still a bit questionable, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm worried about offensive line, but I'm almost positive we're going to get at least one more tackle in the portal, whether it's now or in the spring. So we're going to be getting someone else. So that's why I think that'll happen. And then, but as Oregon has their defense was a lot better this year, and Dan Lanning was the defensive coordinator guru. So I think he might actually be the first coach at Oregon to eventually field a decent defense. And they've been spending a ton of money in the portal. USC has been spending a ton of money in the portal. So I think both those teams are going to be loaded up this year. They're getting both teams have been abusing the portal pretty, very effectively. So I think both those teams will be really tough outs this year.
Yeah, and Penn State has quietly been improving their team through the portal too. And along with their recruiting, I think they're going to be a tough game. Ohio State has to go to Penn State in 2024 to play.
Who's their coach? Who's their coach again?
Yes. Very, very true. Yeah,
that's the big advantage we have in the schedule against you. You may be playing teams equivalent or to Penn State or not as good as Penn State, but they also don't have James Franklin coaching, and he's always good for a screw up.
Yeah. And you know what? Will Howard, to me, I think you're going to win all the games. Ohio State's going to win all the games they're supposed to. There's only 3. It's a 3-game season for Ohio State, right? It's Penn State. I think you play Oregon.
Yeah.
And Michigan. It's 3-game season. Will Howard's going to be just fine against every other team, and I'm sure he'll be heralded quite a bit. But I did watch him against some tougher competition. Just watch some replays. He does tend to completely shit the bed at times. So I think that's it. He
played really well against Missouri. Did you see those highlights?
Yeah, but he had some interceptions in that game too. That I think he actually lost. He did good in that game, but he also lost the game for him too. He reminds me a little bit of McCord in that sense. He's a little bit interception prone. But McCord had an excuse. It was his first year starting, even though it was his third year in the system.
I mean, also his leading receiver was like a fullback, so like he had nothing no one to throw to on that team. It was unbelievable.
It might be completely different with Ohio State's offensive line, and it's going to be fascinating to actually see that.
Yeah, I would say like that's obviously it might even be a bigger concern than offensive line, because you just don't know, like, to beat Oregon and Michigan, like, quarterback is going to be the key. Like, we're going to need to have, like, everyone seems to be that's watched tape of him. All the experts seem to think he's a pretty good quarterback, and especially for college. Like, maybe he's not an NFL quarterback, but college running is way more important as a quarterback. Being a mobile quarterback, it also opens up the run game for running backs as well. Like our best running attack was 2019 and 20 when we had Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins. Like, J.K. Dobbins is a good running back, but the threat of Fields running made Dobbins even better. Like, that's how he was able to get those 2,000 yards because, in addition to just being a good back, like, everyone's worried about Fields.
Well, I'm looking at the Ohio State schedule right now. You guys have a Michigan-like schedule next year.
Yes, it's a joke.
Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa. You play Oregon. Is it at Oregon? Oh, it's at Oregon. That's
a real tough one.
Yeah, Nebraska, Penn State. So you're 2 out of
Nebraska's decent. Nebraska's a decent team. They have a good coach. They play pretty well this year.
Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, and then at home against Michigan. Yeah,
Northwestern was good this year too. Actually,
this could be Ohio State's year, because even if you just lose one game to Oregon, that's probably going to be okay. It's going to be forgiven. You'll get into the playoffs. May not be in the top 2, but I mean, you could easily be undefeated on this one, depending on how Michigan is by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends. I mean, honestly, I think it's going to be up to whether or not we can beat Oregon, whether we're undefeated, because I mean that's going to be, yeah. I mean, I know they've gotten a lot of new players, but they're going from, a basically Heisman quarterback to Gabriel, who is, he put up pretty good numbers, but I think he's a significant drop off from Bo Nix.
Yeah, it might be. It very well might be. But all right, we're about 35 minutes in, so let's wrap this up. I think that it's definitely congratulations to Coach Moore. Michigan made the right decision, and my gosh, I'm super excited to see how they actually plan the rest of their season. Do they get better at recruiting? And
actually, that's one thing before we wrap up I wanted to address. The the last couple of years, Michigan fans have been saying how they were a little, like you and a lot of other Michigan fans were concerned because Harbaugh.
Are you ending with a troll?
He was flirting with the NFL, and so that was what was hurting recruiting. And now Sherrone Moore said that he's going to be doubling or tripling the size of the recruiting department and putting more emphasis on NIL and adding all these people to this operation. It seems like Michigan is going, I don't know about all in, but they're definitely upping their NIL. I mean, they had the big NIL sort of what was it called last year, where they're bringing everyone back. Everyone that came back from Michigan last year wasn't just because they wanted to win a title. They all were compensated too, because Michigan got their NIL to pay some of those players. And so now that it seems like in the last few weeks, I think partially because Ohio State started being aggressive in the NIL portal. So I think that helped. It goes back and forth. Michigan wins the title. Ohio State fans get pissed. They donate a lot of money to NIL. Then we get a bunch of players. And then Michigan fans get pissed. They're like, well, we need to donate to our NIL. So then Michigan's been making a lot of money on their NIL and improvements. So it seems like Moore is putting a huge emphasis on not just NIL, but recruiting department in general. That should be a big help, right, for Michigan going forward. With the recruiting rankings have not been on par with how well you've been performing on field.
Yeah, well, my gosh, that's a really good point, and I hope he is actually improving that. Think about how reactive that is, for both Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah, we should have been doing this for years.
You had to lose to Michigan 3 years in a row and then lose to Missouri before that happens, and now Michigan has to lose their coach and get a new coach. And
I do think low key that Michigan has. I think Michigan has actually done the portal. They haven't gotten for the most part, they haven't gotten super high end portal guys other than the offensive lineman.
Has OH and some cupcakes. Referring to your schedule, I think.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, I mean, you guys have gotten a lot of help on the portal. Great offensive linemen, a great tight end. I mean, are those offensive linemen you got in the portal, are any of them going in the first or second round?
I'm not sure of the first or second. They're just going in the draft. I'm not sure what.
But Loveland, he's going to be allegedly a first round pick too. He was a portal, and then the All American.
No, Loveland was a recruit.
Was he? Who was the other? Who was the tight end you got?
The guy from Indiana.
Yeah, what was his name?
I can't remember his name, but yeah, he's good. He'll be drafted.
Yeah, and then you who was the offensive lineman 2 years ago that you got from Virginia that won the best center in the country?
He has an unpronounceable name.
Well, anyway,
I know.
He was probably drafted
I
high.
I remember his name.
So yeah, you guys were ahead. You guys were ahead of Ohio State in the portal for the first 2 years of the portal, because we got Igbinosun has been okay. A lot of. I mean, he's been pretty good, but he hasn't been elite in my opinion. But really, we haven't really gotten anyone some small name. We have not
before this year.
Yeah. Until now, we have not been able to hit any big targets in the portal, and you guys have done great with the portal. I mean, without the portal, you guys wouldn't have won the title. I mean, you got some great portal players.
Yeah. Okay. I'm. I got to go back to this one. These were not cupcakes. Mello's a Buckeye fan. And says Moore will be the next losing coach to the Bucks. We hope not. He's 1-0 right now. But yeah, and I did. And Michigan's schedule the last 3 years has been pretty pathetic, but they're making up for it this year. 2024, they're making it up for it all at once. So yeah, It's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Michigan's fundraising. They better step up their game everywhere, though. But thanks a lot, everyone in the chat. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. We will talk to everyone later. It's going to be an awesome off season. So we'll talk to everyone very, very soon. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.